has had a chance to speak. Up first, we'll hear from candidate for City Councillor at Large, Mr. David McCarthy.
Thanks, Frank. And I want to thank Frank and the organization for having us here tonight. It's always good for dialogue. We have a good crowd. Let me back up a little bit. My name's Dave McCarthy, and I've been on the school committee for the past 12 years. There have been 3 very productive terms that I've had on the school committee, and I felt it was time to move on and try to look to see if I could help the city like I have helped the schools over the last 12 years. Born in Howes Neck, I married my wife Rosie, who's from Quincy Point, and we have 8 children. All 8 went through Quincy Public Schools, except for one that went to Norfolk Aggie. Probably had Mr. Roos for a teacher over there. And they've all done well. They're all moved on now, and they're working and going to college. Quincy is home to us. When we first got married, we lived with our in-laws in Abington for a few years, and then we moved back to Braintree. We wanted to come back to Quincy. We were in Quincy all the time. And I first ran for school committee in 2003. And it was a long and tough race with some great candidates that year, and I was lucky enough to get on. I found out that it's fulfilling. You get to help the kids, you keep your eye on the community, you get involved with everyone, and if the right type of person for this type of job, you can go a long way. I've chaired almost every subcommittee on the school committee. We have 6 subcommittees. My 2 that I stand out with is the budget, which I love numbers, but also I was the chair of the facilities building committee for the past several years. And that includes being involved in depth with Quincy High School, Central, and now the new Sterling Middle School that's going up. One of those items that I see over in that Sterling area with the middle school is that once it gets up, it'll help the community over there a lot in Ward 4. And that's an area where it could use some help. Which leads me to a few of my items that I'm looking at in regards to campaign platform issues. And one being, I know folks talked about the drug addiction. I know that there's certain areas of Quincy that we have to stamp out and be very vigilant. Over the past few years, I've worked diligently with the school department to add 2 health intervention teachers to work at the high school level. I rewrote and redesigned the health curriculum at the middle school level, and we have the Dale level at the elementary level, but that has to be beefed up now, as we all know how bad this epidemic is. From there, the other items that I look at, the downtown being a big issue, which I think falls in everybody's menu here tonight, along with communication and dealing with the constituents, the administration, and with all the voters out there in Quincy. So I ask for your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
We'll now hear from the next candidate, Ms. Nina Liang. Nina, 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nina Liang, and I want to start by thanking the LGBT community and, of course, Frank Rubino for working so hard in putting this event together. I want to thank my fellow candidates for joining me here tonight, and I want to take a second to thank all of you for taking the time to come out and show your support. I'm excited to be your next city councilor at large. I'm running because I want to make a difference in the neighborhoods that raised me. I want to give back to the communities that taught me the values of hard work, to help other working families of Quincy, and together make our city an even greater place to live, work, and raise a family. Quincy's my home. I was born in Germantown. I was raised in North Quincy, went to Sacred Heart School, and I work here today with my cousin Jimmy. We run a successful small restaurant group, the Fuji Restaurants, putting local people to work, generating more taxes for the city, and provide our neighbors with some really good food. Quincy's meant a lot for me and for my family. I know it's the start that we've gotten here that's allowed our amazing opportunities, and it's made me the confident, successful woman I am today. I want everyone in Quincy to have these same opportunities. These forums are important for the candidates, but they're also important for the community. It's a time for you guys to all come out and talk to us about how you want to move the city forward and make it better. And as I've gone door to door speaking to our residents, I'm finding that our neighbors are actually really eager to get involved and be part of the conversation in making our city better. As I look at our current government, whether it's city, state, or in Washington, the biggest issues I feel need to be addressed are that of transparency and that of engagement. And I know that we hear that a lot, that government needs to be more transparent, but what does that actually mean? In Quincy, a more transparent government would have avoided much of the problems around the downtown development. It's my opportunity to go out and speak to all the neighbors and all of you. And as I've been doing that, I'm finding that the most common question that's being asked is what's actually going on with the downtown development. And in working with my cousin's restaurant group, I've come to really understand the importance of things like cost projections, timelines, who your vendors and your contractors are, and as residents of this city, you all deserve to have a better grasp of that information and to know that if there's a problem, how it's going to be resolved. A more transparent city government in Quincy would also mean better value for our tax dollars. If you live here, you know we pay a lot in this city. And all too often, residents don't fully understand what their hard-earned dollars are being spent on. I'm not promising you tonight that we can radically cut our taxes or that there isn't spending we can't rein in. What I am saying is that more open and honest communication between the residents of Quincy and city government will result in all of us getting better value for our tax dollars. Sorry, I have a lot more to say, but I really just want to end it by saying thank you for this opportunity. I look forward to answering your questions tonight. And respectfully, I ask for one of your 3 votes on November 3rd. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Up next, we'll hear from candidate for City Councillor at Large, Mr. Joe Finn.
I'd like to thank Frank and the LGBTQ meetup for sponsoring this event this evening. I want to run something by you this evening to think about. As we gather here in this room this evening, across the Commonwealth, there's probably anywhere from 800 to 1,800 unaccompanied adult youth homeless persons. Those are persons between the ages of 18 and 24. And they could be on the street, they could be sleeping in adult shelters, they could be couch surfing, they could be doing any number of things, some more harmful than others. What we know from national studies, and we know to be true, just based on experience here, is that in all likelihood, 1 out of 4 of those young adults is part of the LGBTQ community. And I raise that here with you this evening, not because this advocacy group or this organization is holding it, but I hold it up because I think it points out to the complexity that we find ourselves in the midst of today. That there's a new paradigm that's occurring as it relates to public life that applies to you as applies as well to me, but especially to anyone who aspires to lead or to be a legislator today. If this city is going to grow, if it's going to thrive, if it's going to prosper, then it has to recognize that change. And the change is simply this. It's no longer about my child, my kid. It's no longer about my family. It's no longer even about my neighborhood. Instead, that shift that is occurring, or that must occur, is that it's about our children. It's about our neighborhoods. It's about our families. That is absolutely critical. If there's a core value proposition, which I heard earlier, quite honestly, that's been mine. That's why very early on in my career, when a little boy was being discriminated against in terms of joining a basketball league by a very well-known nonprofit, in violation of its own anti-discrimination policies, I threatened to withdraw their access to public facilities to play basketball. Why? Because that little boy could have been my little boy. We've heard a lot of talk about, and unfortunately we hear too much talk sometimes, and not enough action, but about the opioid dilemma. When just recently there was a residential siting, what it was a detox and step-down facility focused on those with opioid addictions was being cited. I came out in support of it. Why? Because that could have been my son or daughter in need of that treatment. And finally, we've heard about the downtown. And again, much has been achieved in relationship to that downtown. I got to stop, time's up. So let me just simply say that when it's all said and done, when the campaign signs come down and the slogans are over, I hope that you'll vote for one person who's willing to wrestle with that complexity, Joe Finn, on November 3rd. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally, we'll hear from Noel Dibona, candidate for City Councillor at Large.
Thank you, Frank. I want to thank the LGBT party here for hosting this tonight. My name is Noel Dibona. I am a candidate for Councillor at Large. I'm a school committee presently right now in the city of Quincy. What I really enjoy is I am in the community. I'm part of the Quincy Point Panthers youth football team. I've been there for 5 years now, coaching 7th and 8th graders in our community, because I know how important it is to educate, mentor, and coach our youth. I also do the Sons of the American Legion over at Morissette Post, 294. For the last 4 years, we put the flags up at the Flag for Vets Island at Fort Square, because I know how important it is for the men and women of the armed forces. My father was a Vietnam veteran, 23 years U.S. Air Force. My grandfather, U.S. Navy, World War II veteran. There are 3 main things out there right now that are the most important in the city of Quincy today. The opiate epidemic is happening all across the city, all across the state. Forefront, and I give you my anonymity tonight. April 28th, 2004 was my last drink of alcohol. I am part of that allegiance. I give you that anonymity tonight because I know what it feels like to be behind that. I know it at a day at a time. It's a struggle that we have to fight together as a group. Education is so important as well. We have to make sure that we have taxpayers' money going into the correct avenues of the educational budget. Being on the school committee, I'm able to do that. Being on the Health and Transportation Chairman, also being on the Sterling Building Committee as a board member as well. Also, I live in Marymount. I'm part of the Marymount Association. My wife, Neve, our 2 sons, under the age of 3, Tyler and Aiden. When I was with Ward 2, and I lived there, I was the Ward 2 Civic Association president. I just give my whole entire life to this community. I care about this community, educated through the Quincy Public Schools. Quincy High School class of '93, I furthered my education at UMass Boston. My whole entire life is dedicated to this city. I don't think we're doing this for financial gain, and I know I'm not doing this for financial gain. This is my commitment to you, the taxpayer, the children, the veterans, the seniors. This is what it's all about. I dedicate my life to this with 2 small children, and I continue to go out and coach, and I continue to help out the veterans, and I continue to do the school committee, because I know how important it is for all of you to prosper in this city. This is a together. I ask you on November 3rd for one of your 3 votes. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for 2 quick audience questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand first. Please do not direct a question to any one particular candidate, but rather you can pose a question to the 4 of them, and we'll give each candidate 30 seconds to make a response. 30 seconds, please. If the 30 seconds runs out, you'll see the stop sign flash in front of you. Yes, how about you over there?
My name is Dan Vito. I lived in Quincy most of my life. daughter owns that house now. Okay. My question is to the, and unfortunately, there's only one representative of the city councilor at large here. I don't know where the other two are. My question is, Quincy is in trouble, big trouble. And the councilors, all of them, on the city council, are a part of the problem. They rubber stamp everything that comes down from the lane. Whatever the mayor wanted, he gets. Rubber stamp, that's the problem. Where is it gonna stop? We're talking about the land in North Quincy, behind the high school. Is that really, we really needed a project like that up there?
Okay, we'll give each candidate 30 seconds to respond to those issues.
I think it was important that the one he had most addressed it to should probably speak first. And again, I'm not entirely certain quite the framework of that is a question, but there's some assertions of facts that I would contradict. Again, that the idea that we have simply been a rubber stamp is not true at all, in my opinion.
How does the mayor get everything he wanted?
Well, the mayor hasn't gotten everything he's wanted all along. First off, if anybody's familiar with the downtown development and the land disposition agreement, the mayor didn't want independent council for that project to begin with. We got that. He's currently waiting for an urban revitalization development plan that he wanted back in March and April and May. He still doesn't have that. That has to be vetted. Very clearly needs to be vetted in terms of understanding. Time's up, but this is really an important and key issue. Because in campaigns, what happens is things have a tendency sometimes to get oversimplified and the complexity of the matter is specifically lost. Let me ask you here about, again, in terms of the budget, for example. We had an 8% increase in the budget this year. Over 2/3 of that goes to things over which we have absolutely no choice as it relates to the education budget, pensions, and again, the health insurance costs that have risen. That's not a matter of a rubber stamp. For 35, 40 years, you had plans for a so-called downtown development, of which nobody's ever moved on. Gratefully, we've had 2 mayors who've been willing in the past 12 years to move it in a direction. And it's been anything but a rubber stamp. It's been long and it's been tough. But look at it this way. We have the brook was moved. That's the only factor for any development that had to occur. Regardless of anything else, that had to occur. The brook has been moved. That much of that infrastructure in terms of the original plan of the connector has been achieved. Much of this is moving forward in relation to that. Where we are presently with the downtown development component is we are back to what our original goal was, which is focusing on our 2 public parcels to make certain that they're developed in an appropriate way that will help inspire some of the private folks, developers as well, to move forward. So again, this is, the day comes when the slogans stop and the signs are put away and the business is not achieved through simple rote answers. Thank you.
Let's give the other candidates a chance to follow up and make a response. David McCarthy.
Thanks, Frank. Good question, Mr. Bythro. I'm not gonna rubber stamp anything if I get on the Quincy City Council, just like I didn't rubber stamp anything on the school committee for the last 12 years. I see a lot of folks up there doing a lot of good work, but at times, not enough questions are asked. On the school committee over the last 3 terms, either, whatever mayor it is, I'm not gonna stop picking on mayors or administrations, but if it's wrong, I'm gonna speak up and say it's wrong. Or I'm gonna make a case to disagree, to agree to disagree with whomever it is. There are a lot of things that go on in Quincy that Councilor Finn just talked about that are big issues that they have to tackle all the time in regards to getting things done. And both administrations, the last two administrations, and I think Joe Finn mentioned it, were the only two that really got this thing off the ground. Now, it didn't get off the ground. It kind of crashed a little bit. Okay, so we're regrouping here now. We can't lay down and just let it die. And they're regrouping and going back to private developers. And Mr. Galvin and Mr. O'Connell and some other folks are buying real estate down there, and they're locking themselves in because they're buying it now. We're going back to the old way. The Streetworks way of public-private didn't work. And we've had a few other examples where public and private or private itself looks like it's gonna be a great thing, and it doesn't happen. But one of the things that I pride myself on at that school committee, and I look back and I'd ask anybody who wants to grab me after to ask me a question about why I did something the way I did it, is that I've done my research, and I don't get in an argument with you just because I don't like the way you look, or I don't like your side of the city, or I don't like this side of the city, or I don't like where you went to school. I'm gonna treat everybody fairly and sit down with everyone and make sure we get the right thing done. Because a couple of these things that we're dealing with have to be done correctly this time. We're only gonna have one shot at it, and the next 4 years are gonna be very, very important, and I hope I can get on to help. Thank you.
Okay, Nina, quick follow-up and response from you.
Thank you. So this goes back to what I said earlier about going out and talking to the community. I'm only one family here in Quincy. Our business is only one business in Quincy. And I need to hear all of the community's concerns on what their number one concern is. And like I said earlier, that's the common question, is what's actually going on. And as your city councilor at large, what I want to do is engage community members like yourself into that conversation before a shovel hits the ground. I want to hear what everyone in the community has to say about what they want to see in their backyard, in their neighborhood. Again, how much is going to be spent. We as residents need to know all of this information so that we can then go to the city council and tell them what we want to see. So again, as your city council at large, that's what I'm looking to do. Just be open, have open dialogue, engage more people in the community into the process, and from there, I think we can have a better developing Quincy.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Noel Dibona.
Mr. Bythew, that's a great question. And I've been thinking about that question a lot. I've been on the school committee for 1.5 years, and I've been on the back end of a 6-1 and a 5-2 vote a few times. If I didn't think it was right for the city and the kids and the parents and the citizens of the city, I wasn't gonna rubber stamp it. I agree with Dave McCarthy as well. I've already experienced it at the school committee level, and I'll do it at the council level. You look at me and you say, oh, you shouldn't be running, you shouldn't be running. Well, there's so much going on in this city today. And in the next 2 years, I can't afford to stay on the school committee for another 2 years. I have to go up to the council. It's a must. It has to happen. Because there's so much gonna happen in the city. We're either gonna flourish and prosper, or we're gonna hit the dirt. And I'm not about to sit on the sidelines and let that happen. I'm a voice for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, one more quick question for the at-large candidates. How about you right over there?
I have a question about the Hancock lot, which is a part of the downtown development. As you know, it's a city-owned lot. All of us sitting here, Quincy residents, own it. The present administration, I believe, has plans to sell portions of the Hancock lot to O'Connell to build a 15-story opposite the courthouse, and to a hotel group that wants to take part of Hancock Street in the back, to sell a portion of that. I want to know from all of you, are you in favor of selling the Hancock lot or portions of it, or would you be in favor of long-term leases? After seeing what's happened at Quincy Hospital and the dispute with the land, and once you sell something, it's gone, and whoever owns it can do whatever they want with it later on. I'd like to know if you're in favor of selling it, or would you be in favor of long-term leases, like 100-year leases?
Okay.
Long after we're gone.
30 seconds, please. Dave McCarthy, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Frank. Arlene, I'll try to answer the question. I'd have to look at it a little bit harder. I feel though, the lease, if you could get, I don't know if you could end up with that longevity of 100 years, but if the city was still tied to that property and we had issues and we didn't have anything there, we're still gonna have to pay for that property somehow if we don't have someone leasing, if the economy goes the other way. But it's something I'd have to look at, really, in all honesty, and get a better look at the Hancock lot. In regards to the other side, with private developer buying the lot, as long as it's done legitimately and there's plenty of public hearings about what's gonna happen, I don't have any problem if all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed in regards to a private developer having that area over there, be it one, be it multiple, as long as everyone's involved in a conversation and things just don't start going flying up in the Hancock lot. And I've heard about Peter O'Connell and the 15-story building. We'll have to see if that gets off the ground. I know he's made promises, and again, I haven't been that in-depth yet. I hope to in November, or past November, after November 3rd. That's more due diligence needs to be done on my part to answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nina, 30 seconds, please.
Thank you for your question. I'm actually going to agree with you and say that I'd have to look into a little bit more. But when questions like those do come up, as your city councilor, what I would like to do is make sure that the entire community, not just in the immediate area, but in all of Quincy, is involved in that conversation. Because what's happened is that when I walk to different neighborhoods in Quincy, people, far removed from Quincy Center, feel like they're not being listened to and being considered for their opinion simply because they're not right next door. And I don't think that's right. Because as a resident of Quincy, regardless if it's, the development's going up right in your backyard or if it's going up across town, you're still a taxpayer here. Your opinion still matters. So in answering that question, if I were a city councilor, what I'd like to do is make sure that we engage everyone in the community, regardless of how close you are to the actual development. Thank you.
Joe Finn.
I've been reflecting on this question for, at this point, close to 12 years, Eileen. So let me give you my perspective on this. As you were speaking, quote from Mark Twain came into mind. He said, hold on to land, they're not making any more of it. Is that as we develop further the downtown and we focus back on those public lots, one of the key issues and questions, in my opinion, that has to be resolved is what type of financing model are they going to be utilizing to achieve whatever the objective is in the multiple number of projects that could develop. I believe that ground leases would be a particularly viable financing form that, quite honestly, most municipal projects today rely on it to a great deal. That, again, is to both the benefit of the developer, but to make your point as well, to create and hold on and value for years to come. One thing that I want to have everyone understand, because it's been this way from the beginning as well, is that nothing can move forward, absolutely nothing can move forward there without a land disposition agreement in place. And that land disposition agreement has to pass through the city council. And that's one of the things that we're fighting on the urban revitalization development plan now, is to ensure that's memorialized there. And lastly, in terms of the private projects, there's also urban renewal covenants that are negotiated, that where the city makes certain deals around infrastructure, we are trying as well to make certain that the council is engaged in that, so that from a transparency perspective, everyone can know the true nature of the deals going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Noel Dibona.
I'm like Dave and Nina, I'm gonna need a little bit more information on this. However, there is so much going on in the city today. You go down the street, there's so much construction. Everywhere you look down the city, we're moving very fast here. We really are. The streetworks thing, we lost 2 to 4 years of time. We didn't lose any money, but we lost time, and time was money. So we have to be careful what we do right now on this situation that you're particularly talking about. maybe at least for 10 years, might not be a bad idea, just in case it goes sour. You don't know what's gonna happen for the future. If that goes wrong and you're locked in for quite a while on the LDA and it goes through, you're there. So with so much going on to the city right now, that variable maybe can change the variable of that. And I'll end with that. Thank you.
Thank you. And how about another round of applause for the at-large candidates? Thank you. You may step down. Okay, so that brings us to the big position of the night, the candidates for mayor. Can I have the candidates for mayor step forward?